discussion. Up first today, we have American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, allocations and an update. With this, Michelle.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So we said we would make sure that we are doing quarterly updates. And what I thought I would do is provide a little quick summary. Just as a reminder, total ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, better known as ARPA, the city received a total of $20.4 million. And yes, we have received all of that money. We received it over 2 different years, one May of 2021, and the last one was at the very end of May of 2022. Of that $20.4 million, as of last week, we had actually spent $4.75 million, or approximately 23%. And a breakdown, in fiscal year 21, we spent 2.15. In fiscal year 22, we spent 2.11. And so far, just through October 27th, we spent about $500,000. Again, this is actually spent. This isn't what we have approved. We have purchase orders and we have encumbered, but things that actually come through. And then also, just as a quick summary, there are 7 different categories, and what I did was include a nice little chart on the very front. This group, we had several meetings, and we allocated and allotted, I know, but it's not. That's what Scott, our city administrator, said the same thing, but it's not. You'll see that there's different colors in this. When you do the circles, it's much easier, and it on the eyes, especially when you make copies, if everything is a different color. If it's the same color and it's a shade off, sometimes they kind of blend into each other. But of the total $20.4 million, this group, we've allocated through our planning to put money in all 7 categories. So just as a reminder, there's the 7 categories and where we have planned to spend the majority of it. Yeah, actually, flip the page. First, we're going to talk about, and before we flip the page, I do just want to say one of the things that is a requirement of any ARPA funding, whether it's for us, whether we give it to another recipient for like a grant program, or whether we actually award it and have a project and are paying a vendor, the federal government now requires that everybody who is an end recipient of this money must be registered on SAM.gov. And so what I would say there is that process used to be a really simple process. It used to take less than, if you already had a registry and you were just doing an update, it took less than 24 hours. That is no longer even the case. So there is a serious backlog as they're making new people get registered, and it's taking months. Wow. But you have to be an organization. So in order for us to give a money to a group, you actually have to be filed first and actually have an organization and have either a federal ID or social security number that you're at that under, and then further you have to be registered on this website. Okay, that said, we flip to the charts. So on the first one, in grand total, again, the columns coming across or to represent the 7 different categories, what we did was we combined, because as you get 7, the writing gets really small, and sometimes, you know, getting older, can't see all those when we get it too small. So we combined.
Why do you keep looking at me when you say that?
No, I said me. I said I'm getting older. So we combined premium pay and administration or administrative column so that we can keep it to 6. And this first chart is just all the things that have either been brought forward to council and we've already have approved and or purchase orders on. So of the $20.4 million, this sheet represents about 12.7 or 12.8 million. And we'll just run through these. So we have a project approved at the Hagerstown Ice Rink that's going to improve the air quality there. That project, actually, we are just finishing up. So it looks like we've spent everything, but we haven't. There's another portion of that project that is being funded by other than ARPA dollars. So again, the project is well underway and will be almost finished soon. 32 North Potomac Building purchase and acquisition and relocation. So we spent $825,000 because we've acquired the building. The good news is engineering said last week we're almost ready to go. We've actually put the bid out for the actual construction and renovation. So the rest of that money will be spent then, and I may be coming back to this body depending on how high of a numbers we see on that construction and renovation cost. Then we also, next, we did $12,800 for the Horizon Goodwill. And again, that's been approved. Hadn't spent anything to date. Next column under negative economic impact, we approved to give money to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the CVB. And I know it only shows a small dollar amount there so far spent, but we did just at the end, just last week, we're in the middle of processing their first reimbursement request. So they have spent some monies and they have sent that, so we're good to go. We're moving in the right direction. In the next column, under negative impact in the public sector, we spent money on two-factor authentication software, and that was a great security enhancement that we were able to do here. That has done. And then right underneath that, outreach coordinator position, which was approved just a few months ago. And this person actually reports to HP. The next category is infrastructure, and as a reminder, the three infrastructure projects we were going to assign was Pump Station 13 and Pump Station 33 for wastewater. Both of those projects are going to shortly be under design. Then the third one is a stormwater project, and this stormwater project is the portion at that's going to be combined with the Hagerstown Fieldhouse. This money for this is in no way going to be for the construction of that building, but it is 100% going to be utilized for the stormwater area because we definitely have some work there we have to do. So we're still kind of in the midst of finished the second design, getting ready to go to phase 3 shortly. But again, soon to be under final design there. Under revenue replacement so far, we've got a fire ladder truck on order. We were just notified last week that, and we had to put a deposit down, but we were notified that that product has now been delayed and we're not gonna get it until May of 2023. A backhoe purchase, we literally just received it, and it took months and months and months. We literally just received it last week, so you'll see the money that we spent there. The camera truck, which was for wastewater, we received in the last fiscal year, and it's operational and working great. Approved for police department some new upgrades with body-worn cameras and tasers and such. So we've done the first portion of that so far. Have a roof that we are working on over at the Fairgrounds Park area, and it's right over Powell. It was just recently approved last month, the prior month, and at regular session, and a purchase order has been generated. And as with it, at the same time, we also approved a gas generator that's for the fire department. So again, those bottom two things were just recently approved and the purchase orders have been done. The next column, premium pay, that was finished. It was one of the first things we did, and one of the only things we did in fiscal year 21 timing-wise that we could get accomplished. And then our grant coordinator position. And we added that spent to date just so that it kind of keeps your eyes on things. You can kind of see hopefully where we're at. And we're hopeful that later this week we will get this chart and the next one up on the website so that it stays there, and we'll try to update it then on a quarterly basis. So the next page, the remaining $7.6 million that we have specific categories that we originally discussed. And so one of them is behavioral and mental health for $500,000. I really don't have much of an update there. And then also youth violence prevention program, and I don't have an update on either of those two things to provide. But under negative economic impact, excuse me, we did hear from United Way. They actually came in and did a presentation. I think they've been in twice. And they have a way to actually spend, and a program in mind to spend this whole $425,000 that we have dedicated here. Everything that they presented it was more than just education. It was a different demographic than where a lot of the other monies were going when we said we didn't want to give just in the education bucket. We didn't want to give just in the broadband bucket because those categories were already receiving. This would actually be for city residents, and not just to help with their education, but to make to encourage them to go to education to cover childcare and also transportation, which are 100% eligible. So United Way came in and did a presentation, and then we would just need to know, I would just need to know before we move forward with getting contracts and agreements in place. We would need some follow-up and a decision from this body on if that's who we're gonna work with. So
And
more to
that's a-
come there.
And that's a question of whether you want to discuss it again in a work session, or whether you just want to put it to vote in the regular session at the end of the month. And if you don't feel a need to discuss it anymore, you can up or down it.
And it takes a few weeks because
Yeah.
we have to generate a sub-recipient
22nd.
agreement and a resolution. We have to do it, we have to share it with the
Right.
other group. Their attorneys have to look at it, our attorney has to look at it, and then we
Right.
have to get it all together back on the agenda, so. Do you think you want another work session?
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
What was that?
yes, he said yes, another work session.
Okay.
Kristen, you want United
Just
Way,
try to-
United
try to
Way's
figure it out.
presentation?
No, we'll do a separate work session and add it just for this group and body. We don't need to bring United Way back again for a
No,
third
we
time,
just,
do we?
no, we
Okay.
don't need that.
Very good. The next two items were going to be new economic incentives that we were looking to create. One was the creation of some home office spaces, and we were leaving 50,000 there, and then also a local artist and band for about 25,000. We've been talking internally, and one of the suggestions that has come to light is that there might be some real need for monies to help incentivize, develop a new program, so that some of the empty, vacant and empty spaces that we have, that we could help incentivize them to be filled with restaurants, to come up with a restaurant type of a grant. So if that were the case, we may be looking to reallocate money out of the home office space to do this different program. And if there would be interest, we would be working with Jill and her group to kind of develop a program and then come back and discuss that program and then move forward from there, whether you liked it or
That,
not.
that was something that came out of MML Fall Conference, where there was a couple of cities were using ARPA money to provide grants to people that would be looking to put restaurants currently in areas that are vacant but were not formerly restaurants. So that would include, you have to basically create a kitchen area.
Which could be cost prohibitive to a
Yeah,
lot of.
and the overhead would be very cost prohibitive, but these couple of towns have just started that program. So thought that might be a worthy one, being that we have several retail or office only, kind of what I was getting to earlier when we were talking, that potentially could go retrofit a space for a restaurant or a deli or whatever that was formerly an accounting office or something like that, so.
And we could look at like reallocating money that we've already said we
Right.
wanted to do it, an economic incentive, and we wanted to start with this dollar amount. We don't want to start too large or too small because we want the program to be successful, but at the same time, being aware that, Jill and her group and her staff resources are also limited in the number of programs that they can get up and running and have completed between now and December 2024. So if there's interest in that, we'll have Jill kind of work that up and bring it back, and we could look at reallocating money from here and/or taking some additional dollars out of revenue replacement. Blight eradication and affordable housing, 500,000. We've had a lot of meetings and discussions.
Yeah, we're actually to a title search, we've done title searches on 3 properties, and we got those back yesterday.
Yeah, I was gonna
And,
say, I think it
we'll
was this
be-
week, not last
Yeah,
week.
a couple little quirks in there that we'll have to figure out, but that, I think we'll be ready to bring something to you here real soon on that.
And so the ones that we utilize and can use ARPA funding for, we just have to be cognizant and aware that it's not necessarily, we can't just demo, it is end purpose. What is the end
Right.
purpose? What is gonna happen with that? So there's some restrictions there, but again, we've got money to make this happen. Then we also have the FSU Hub at USMH, and they came in and did a presentation. It is actually scheduled for later this afternoon for a vote, but for now, it's one that we discussed and it wasn't approved yet, so it's on a sheet. Office 365 implementation, this will help all citywide staff be on one central central office suite, which is huge. It helps not only being able to work from home, but it just is a very cohesive manner. Right now, I don't know if anybody knows this, but sometimes even within my department, 4 of us could have different versions of Excel, so when we get ready to incorporate into one document, we have hardship, but not just within my department, but also across departments. So that's big. It will actually should be on the vote coming up for the regular session at the end of this month. And then the citywide phone system, we're still looking at being able to do it, but we can't do anything until after the Office 365 is done. Under revenue replacement, we have fire range target system. We just got bids back, and the system that has been recommended by those in the police department that have looked at that is going to be right underneath the $25,000 limit. So we're going to be able to process a purchase order soon, but that is one that technically will not come back because it's under our purchasing threshold, and we did a bid, and we had several responses, 3, I think. Fuel station management and tank gauge system, that was budgeted. We haven't really moved forward on it. Professional court extension, again, the 1.1 is not all of the city's portion that we're paying for this project, but it's the portion of our project we're using ARPA funding. So it's underway with approvals and things that we've got in place. Drones, I think that there was a presentation or a demo for drones that the police department is
for
looking
vote
to
tonight.
utilize. And so should be on today's special session for a vote, but again, until the vote is formalized, it's here. Then next, now this one is a new one that I haven't had segregated and out separately. And I put it here because I really wanted to bring our attention to it. City Hall elevator replacement, I don't know if anybody's been aware, but we haven't been able to use our elevator in probably a very long time. We've got 2 for the building, so that's a good thing, but only 1 right now is functional. So while we have this money and we're able to do improvements with our own buildings, I would really like to move forward. Eric and Rodney, so both of them have been working, and we're hoping to get some design and be able to get it in specifications so we could get it out to bid. But before we did, typically we don't come and say, hey, we're gonna do a bid, are you okay with it? We wait till we do the bid and award. But is there any objections to us moving forward in looking at using ARPA so that we can get this project done and get us the other elevator working in our building? Okay. All right. And then finally, just the rest of the money, we have about $4.3 million left as a placeholder, and we would use it in revenue replacement things, but already, I will say, 32 North Potomac building, as we were getting ready and finalizing and getting it put out to bid, we heard from the fire marshal's office that we needed some additional things and safety things finished because of storage that we have in the basement, and we know that that is going to add a significant chunk. So when that bid comes back, I would really probably ask, I don't have another funding sources identified, so I was hoping we could utilize this. And then one of the other thoughts we had was, in City Hall, as most of you know, we do not have central AC, and I know that that might be a bigger ticket item, but I think air quality wise, it would certainly help. I know I joke all the time with the city administrator, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. The council chamber room, and there's one other room in the city, and every time after I talk for a while, I start to get froggy. It's only in these 2 rooms, I'm not sure. Either I'm allergic to the room, or it would be very beneficial. And as we know, either the AC can either be turned on for the council chambers, or it can be turned on for the lobby. And again, not knowing what type of price ticket would be on that, but I think would be a great.
But we
way
have no
to
air
utilize.
conditioning in the hallways.
No.
Certainly not
Or
up on the 4th
bathrooms,
floor. It's
or-
a furnace in the summertime. Or in any of the offices, are all windy units, so.
But that's my update. It's a lot of information.
Thank you.
Any issues with any of that from anybody, where we're going?
Thank you.
I'd like to say,
Next is the.
Actually, we did one very similar to that in the budget book, so I went back to the budget book and just updated it.
it works.
See?
You send that to Ohio,
My budget book was first.
Up next, we have the preliminary budget for general fund agency contributions.
So yes, believe it or not, we just got, the congratulations, we're finished with our fiscal year 22 audit. And now I'm already here to talk about fiscal year 24 budget. But by policy, I was supposed to be here in October, so I missed it by a day. I'm a day late, I'm very sorry about that. But it's November 1st. By policy, this group every year before we start the budget process have to ask two important questions regarding general fund agency contributions. And first, that is, we have identified by policy 8 core agencies, and that's the wording that we use. I need to know if we need to make a change to those 8. And then the second part is, typically we do anywhere, when we don't have additional obligations or things that we have pledged to these organizations, our average amount on a yearly basis was between $195,000 and $205,000. So, need to make sure you're okay with me starting the year budgeting $205,000. So, one, are we good with having 8 agencies? And the 8 agencies, just as a reminder, are Community Rescue Services, Hagerstown Municipal Band, Hagerstown Neighborhood Development Partnership, Maryland Symphony Orchestra, the Maryland Theater, Washington County Historical Society, Washington County Museum of Fine Arts, and Washington County Free Library. The only thing I will note is in the last 2 fiscal years, we have, after budget adoption, we've come back and subsequently given monies to the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. So are we okay keeping the 8? Do we need to make changes to have an 8?
Would you like to include Heart of the Civil War Heritage in as number 9?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
No.
There are 600 and plus nonprofits that operate within Washington County. For me, I look at these, and I feel like a broken record when I say this. When I look at this, I say, okay, which one of these 600 plus entities do I look at and say, this is something that's almost quasi would happen, you know what I mean, in some governmental capacity or representative of the city capacity, in that absence. And I could make it, I know that made an argument for the Maryland Food Bank one time, and so every time you make an argument for one to become part of this list, you're creating the argument that all should be part of this list.
That's why I believe we have that contingency allocation, so that we can, at our discretion, fund an entity that comes in and asks.
Okay.
I'm fine with the 8 original. I know it took a long time to narrow this down years ago. So,
A lot of meetings.
yes.
Yeah.
So you don't want to add the
No,
heritage?
we can, again, they can,
At one time, we had like 30 plus
we did.
entities.
We
Yeah,
did.
these are
Wait.
solid 8.
So then are you good with the funding?
Yes.
Leaving it at 205 to start the budget? Okay.
Hey, you guys good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, solid waste curbside services rate adjustments for 2023. Rodney and Michelle.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Michelle Govern's here with me. She's our account manager with Waste Management. Pat Harity, familiar face. He is in charge of the guys in the field and they get the job done. And I think it's appropriate to start with thanking them. I think we have 15,000 at some accounts, as you'll see here. And if you pick up trash, recycling, and yard waste from them, that's 45,000 times a week that we service residents, 45,000 chances to make a mistake, and we often have very few problems, so we really appreciate the work that they do in all kinds of weather.
I actually like the fact that they get my yard waste and recycling first, because that way when I leave to go to work, I can take out my trash and put it out, so I don't have 2 cans out there at the same time.
Good deal.
Only have 1.
Good deal.
Works out well.
So we can work that out for you.
I leave mine out all
So they have a 6-year contract with us. 2023 will be the 6th and last year of the contract. And we can discuss next year if that contract will be extended or if we're gonna rebid that. But for today, we're just talking about what's gonna happen next year in 2023. Right now, residents pay $50 per unit for all those services that we just talked about. That is well below what people outside the city pay. I would say 30 to 50% less, or it's 30 to 50% of what people outside the city pay. And I think they can vouch for that rate as being very reasonable. But they are seeking some increases, just like everything else. Costs are going up with fuel, labor, and everything. But also the recycling market is really I think the problem issue. And we'll get into that in a second, where those costs of processing recyclables is going up significantly. Just so you know, the contract does have a section in there about price adjustments, and it's based on the Consumer Price Index, which in the last 12 months has been up over 8%. So we have that in the contract. They're asking for above that for at least the recycling part. So in their letter, in Michelle's letter to me, they asked for various adjustments, and I made those into this chart that I like to refer to as we go through that. So the first line is solid waste, that's the trash, and they're asking for a 6% increase there. And at the far right-hand side, you see that results in additional costs to the city of $16,779 per quarter. The yard waste is also being a 6% increase request, carried out to the far side, $4,081 per quarter. But here's the big one, the recycling, the request is for $650 a monthly fee, which is almost a 50% increase, which results in a $97,505 per quarter increase in cost to the city. I added those three up and it yields $118,000. If you take that $118,000 and you divide it by the number of units that we serve, which is 15,000 and some, that yields about an $8 per quarter increase to residents if we grant the increase that they're requesting. In my memo, I said there's a couple ways we can reduce that. One would be is if we go to every other week recycling, which I'll let them talk about what they see in other communities. That's not an unusual thing, and it's something we should either consider now or in the future. If we did that, there would be no increase at all in the recycling cost. The other thing is we can just simply hold to what the contract says and use the CPI and adjust their pricing accordingly. That would result in only a $3 per quarter increase per unit compared to the 8. So maybe that's a good place for me to stop. Maybe there's a compromise in between, I don't know, but I guess I wanted to get your feeling on the increase. I think by contract, we're obligated to do the CPI. Everybody knows the current situation with things. Do we want to give them any relief on the rest?
Well, I can only speak to my personal situation. I only have, well, I have 2 in my household plus the grandkids when they're there all week, but I only recycle every other week. I don't have to recycle every week. You know, I'm comfortable to do it every other week. But again, I have limited people in my household compared to a lot of other households, you know. And I would like to hear, I mean, you,
I jump off the wall into the recycling can to smash it down.
I'm sure you do, on day 3.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so yeah, it's significant.
Yeah,
What size container do you use? Do you
Whatever
use
the
full-
biggest one you,
The big one?
yeah.
and then sometimes I take my neighbors and use his too, 'cause he's never there, so.
My
Yeah, I mean, I have a
concern,
lot.
sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I have a lot.
My concern would just be more trash out in this city. I mean, recycling, but especially in the downtown core where we get complaints all the time. And I think that if we do it less, that's not gonna be a good thing.
I mean, out of necessity, I'd have to stop. I'd have to stop some portion. You know what I mean? I just would. There's no way that I could,
Wait 2
go-
weeks.
yeah, yeah, I'd have
More
to
would go to
throw,
the
yeah, I'd have to throw
landfill.
more out into the trash. I just would.
That's my concern. I mean, at least for my household, recycling is a big thing. And I don't want to put too much in the trash. And I feel like every other would be just promoting throwing away stuff that we can recycle and use later. So I wouldn't be okay with every 2 weeks.
The static figure for yard waste, there's 15,117 accounts. And I think I said this a couple years back when Bob suggested that we move trash to the rear in downtown. I'm just curious, when I see that number for yard waste, I'm curious how applicable that particular program is to what I'll call, you know, sort of the 16 block downtown area.
Do you ever get any yard waste downtown?
Oh, very, very little.
Yeah, I just look at that number and go, there's no way that,
You're talking zone F.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very little.
you know, I'm just curious why we apply that cost to zone F. I don't know at all.
I think we could say that we're not servicing yard waste in that area. We'd have to work that out, but if we're not picking it up, it shouldn't affect them.
Yeah, I don't know, that's why I'm curious, like, you know, I'm sure people get leaves, and so I'm just curious how
I
much
think
it's
we just did it for
actually used.
consistency, ease of administration, kind of thing.
For those that would have a yard, would they be able to place it with their regular waste, regular garbage?
Could they mix yard waste in with
Yeah.
trash?
Yeah,
Unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, we can't take
Yeah.
yard waste.
Okay.
Well, I don't think that's any better than the recycling question, you know, going like, I'm just thinking of if there's something we don't use, you know, there's no reason to drive around, you know.
Yeah. So the recycling commodities market, when we first started this contract, almost 12 years ago, we were actually getting paid for the material that we were collecting. So much so that we were actually rebating the city for what we were selling and collecting on their behalf. Unfortunately, fast forward to 2022, we now pay upwards of $90 a ton to get rid of recyclables, to get them to an aftermarket processing facility and then on to, you know, ultimately being reused. Now, if you look at the rate we charge for just disposing of your MSW, your household trash, it's $39.99 a ton to get rid of it. So it's more than double the cost for Waste Management to process that, and we've never passed that cost on. That's something that we have absorbed over the years, and it just continues to climb. So that's why we came to Rodney and made that request, so.
We essentially, when we bid the contract, it was for the collection part of the contract only. So just driving around and the labor involved, et cetera. Now, not only are we seeing cost increases in the collection aspect, we are now paying $85 a ton to dispose of the recycling. So when you put those two together, you know, the contract no longer is especially the recycling aspect of it, but in the grand scheme of things, we're essentially subsidizing the contract at this point. And, you know, we, just as a company, as a whole, are definitely looking at those contracts a little harder and, you know, how those are gonna play out. And, you know, our directive is to, you know, kind of make these requests and, you know, see what the council says, and, you know, if not, then we just keep moving along. We're not gonna stop the contract or stop servicing, it's just, you know, it's a request, but, in good faith.
Is, given the proportionate increase in manpower costs, I know that we've looked at this in Frederick County, is there an operational mechanism we could employ here to make that more cost-effective for you? In other words, right now, what we do is you put your recycling bin out there and it's got the metal arm, right? And so, in a perfect world, the truck goes by and it can grab it and dump it. But on the trash side, it's just whatever somebody sets out. If we went to a bin style, the same as we have the recycling, it seems to me that there would be a more efficient operation of collection, which would decrease our costs.
And that is actually a part 2 of our
That's the next
request.
thing we wanna get into.
So there is that aspect to that. You know, obviously, this is the last year of the contract, but because we are seeing such a labor shortage, our labor costs have gone up significantly, whereas in the past, historically, labor has been 5% of our collection operations cost. They're now 35%. I mean, I have all kinds of stats here to like tell you all the cost increases we're seeing, but the automation is what we call it, where we are how we service your city now is through a manual collection, especially for the trash. And it's not mandatory to have carts. What we're moving towards as a company, just to kind of draw from a larger labor pool and taking the manual labor out of it, we're going to cart limited, mandatory carts, all contents in carts. Residents could have 2 carts if they needed, but everything in a cart with an automation, so the driver doesn't really have to get out of the truck. He can take the arm. You know, there are I know that it doesn't work in all applications for like downtown, et cetera, but there is, you know, obviously different forms of automation for our trucks. You know, there's the side load, there's front load cans, there's, you know, there's tippers for the back of the truck, et cetera, that, you know, kind of make that easier for our drivers. But right now, it's so much labor. What we're proposing, for 2023 is to take the Zone F, correct, Zone F?
Downtown.
To a automated collection, meaning that the carts would be provided to the residents, and we would start transitioning into an automated and see how it went, kind of like a trial run in 2023. And then when we, whether we extend the contract or whether you all put it out to RFP, and that's how we respond, we would respond to do 100%, or at least try to get 100% of automation. Doesn't work everywhere, like I said, but I think the biggest thing for everyone to understand is that it is a transition, and to, you know, have a drop dead date of January 1, 2024. We go from, you know, manual, no carts to January 1. We go to, you know, a whole different way. So it's kind of like phasing it in, if you will. Because if you were to put this out to RFP and as it stands right now, how you're serviced, we wouldn't be able to bid on it. I mean, we're being told from a corporate perspective, it's automated or it's nothing.
It makes sense. And I think that's the logical progression
Right.
that we have to go
I
through.
guess my concern is that what would you do in Zone F with the parking, with much of this?
You'd still use a laborer and probably a tipper. I don't know that you could use
We'd
a
still have to
farm.
move, so there's certain sections
'Cause of
of
parked cars.
the city, obviously, that, you know, where you have one way, and cars parked on both sides. Very difficult for an automated application there. We'd probably still have to have a second person on the vehicle to move containers in between.
Right, just to move them into position.
Yeah, to get them close enough.
But time-wise, that's way more efficient.
Oh, sure, yeah,
Storage.
yeah. Plus, you know, everything's containerized, and you don't have big piles of garbage laying.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
was so,
I think that's what,
so much too.
And I know down
Across the
here in
city.
Zone F, that's a big concern. We hit it very early because
Yeah.
there's just big piles of white and black bags that are
Oh,
falling
yeah.
down the sidewalks. So the carts, I know there's limited storage capacity in front of the home, but it's, you know,
No.
so,
Even if they're present, uniformity looks better
oh, sure.
in a consistent manner than trash night, you know.
Would-
Definitely have to change our code. Right.
Paul, would we be in a position to cite properties that do not, that would not, adhere to utilizing bins instead of just throwing,
Back on
you
the
know,
sidewalk.
baggies out?
Currently, Zone F requires trash cans.
Okay,
But,
but it,
They
yeah,
don't use them.
right.
they don't use them.
Right.
Yeah, we've talked about
Some do.
getting
Yeah.
totes
To
for
be
the
fair.
downtown
Not many.
for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably talked about
I
that
mean, I'm all in
Yeah.
favor
three or four
of
times.
making it as cost-effective and efficient an operation as possible.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not
labor-
concerned about a quarterly increase to me, but I am concerned about those individuals who are on a fixed income.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty big jump for them. I mean, any way that we could go to pare that down would be beneficial to those older residents who are on fixed income. So
Can you talk
really
in the
probably don't-
microphone, please?
Probably don't put out as much trash as I do.
I can hear the comment section in my head. Can you make
Just-
sure you talk in your mic?
I'm
I-
sorry.
Sorry,
I
I
need
always
to
get
get to it.
complaints about it.
Just to finish the thought on the totes, if we want to do those downtown, it's about 1,000 of them. We'd have to raise the rate about $1 a quarter to pay those off in a year, and then we'd have 1,000 totes downtown. The great thing is, all the trash would have to be in those totes to be picked up. The bad news is that there would be some more totes sitting on some of the sidewalks, but I think uniformity does look better than trash bags.
Yeah, I've seen other jurisdictions where,
Yeah.
you know,
That's way better.
I'm just talking, Michelle.
can we get some kind of cost associated, I mean, if we go to totes and the automated, you know, I mean, you know, what kind of reduction are we looking at?
So, as it stands right now, the increase that I've asked for doesn't take the automation aspect out of, like, it's not a factor into what I asked for. And I'm only asking for really an exceptional or an extraordinary increase in the recycling,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So so we have looked at the numbers, and only because we're proposing Zone F, and because we haven't incurred the cost of automated trucks, et cetera, yet. You know, there really isn't any savings to be had per se for 2023
Correct.
while we transition in. However, we have looked at the numbers and what we plan on, as of today, proposing, because I'm gonna submit a proposal to extend, and looking at it, the whole picture, the cost increase is relatively minimal by doing it automated. So I wouldn't say that it's gonna decrease your cost that you see today, but if
Oh,
you were to
no,
put
no,
this
I'm-
out to bid, I feel like, you know, the costs are gonna be a lot higher. You know, knowing that, you know, we're trying to, you know, continue to service and be a good partner, we're looking at this and saying, you know, if they're not gonna put this out to bid, then, you know, this is what the cost structure looks like, and it's not as significant as I've seen in some other contracts. Because we're going with the assumption that we're gonna be automated and less manpower for 2024 and moving forward.
So is there a way that we could, you had just said ARPA, like, use ARPA money to offset the costs for our residents just for 23? Because, I mean, with inflation and everything else going on right now, I mean, it's a bad time it's a bad time. And I know it's bad for businesses too, obviously, but it's bad to say, hey, we're raising your bill $8 a quarter. we know everyone's struggling, but we gotta do what we gotta do. So is there a way we could use another funding source to cover it for a year while we
I think,
implement the
I don't know if you
changes?
could pay for the totes for the downtown if you wanna do that. That might be a possibility. I'd have to defer to Michelle on that.
But I feel like that's a separate issue. I mean, I'm looking at this,
Yeah.
and I appreciate the chart, but I think that the public needs to hear the brass tacks of this chart. And when you look at it, what you're telling the average resident is, hey, your trash collection's going up $1 a quarter, right? When I'm looking at this, it's like $1.05 a quarter, and that's the number. So when you're looking at the public, you're saying, look, your trash rate's gonna increase $1 a quarter, that's like 30 couple cents a month. Your yard waste is going to increase roughly 30 cents a quarter. I mean, the average person, you know what I mean, account holder, I mean, it's $1.30 a quarter. And so if we're not gonna make any changes to recycling, you know, if we're not gonna go backwards, in that process, then you have to accept, you know, that the citizenry needs to understand that out of that $8, really about 6.5 of it is for the recycling. So the only option we have, people, you know what I mean, is to reverse course on recycling because of that cost change over time, or accept that it's another $6.5 a quarter to, and I know it's so cliche to say do the right thing, but you know, to responsibly manage the waste. Or we can all pay 10 years from now when some company comes in and mines it back out of our landfill, right? I just, so.
Or with the recycling, you could give them a 8% increase, which is about $3, I think. They're requesting, so their request is $8 a quarter impact on the residents. By contract, we only would have to increase it about $3 per quarter if you just give them a cost of living increase.
I hear
Or
you
you can
saying that,
compromise something.
but I also hear a company that sat here and said, we gave you consideration by putting the money back in your pocket when we were making money on it.
It's true.
Now we're coming to you saying, hey, we ain't making money on this, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's a service. I don't know. I don't look at it much different than I do water and sewer. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's an enterprise fund. It's gotta be self-supporting.
I mean, I'll pay $8 extra a quarter to get that stuff from the side of my house. There's too many people at my house. I'm okay with it.
Are you guys okay with that?
It's environmentally friendly to have it picked up often, because if we don't, it's gonna end up in the landfill.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the garbage.
And
Yeah.
it's
And then I'm
not
gonna pay it in the tonnage,
environmentally friendly.
you know,
No.
I'm gonna pay it in the tipping fee
Correct.
cost, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And it ain't gonna be as
Exactly.
much because it doesn't weigh anything, but we're gonna eat it in the tipping fee cost when it comes back and they say, yeah, you know that change you made?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now we've gotta increase this because everybody started putting the stuff in the garbage.
Yep.
And now the amount we're paying in tipping fees has went up, right? Because they're two different things. You know, your collection costs and your
The landfill
tipping
fees
fees.
they're static, but the amount of tons.
That's
going-
right, what you pay going across there is gonna end up on our dime, you're gonna come back and say, you know, now it's 40 cents this way, you save 50 cents there, but now it's 40 cents over here. I'm, you know, you're gonna pay to get rid of it either way.
And this is not gonna be the last we hear of situations where costs are going up as it applies to us, so. Where it's something we're gonna have to struggle with
That's a
as we
whole
get
nother
into budget
conversation, then,
season
yeah,
and.
it's
That's
scary.
an
Sorry.
interesting point that you brought up, is that, you know, the strategic diesel supply in the northeast quadrant usually sits around 50 million gallons.
Yeah.
And it's well below that right now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the supply chain issues that, you know, a company like Waste Management is dealing with, we couldn't even get automated trucks until 2024. We're still taking delivery and waiting on delivery of trucks we ordered in 2020, this year. So, it's a lot of
Yeah.
It's a lot of interesting times for us, but.
And there are stations that cannot get diesel right now.
Yeah, but we appreciate you at least hearing what we had to say. That's all we really came here to ask for.
Well, the other thing is, you hear these numbers like 50% increase. It'll be one thing if we were sitting here and it was 100 going to 150, but it's 450 going to 650. You know,
That's a month, that's not a quarter.
I know, I'm just saying, but the numbers are not, you know,
I get it, yeah. Again, you're not gonna have an argument for me, I love the fact that I don't have to haul my trash to the dump or have another company that I gotta pay more money to come get it.
I agree. I just think we need to be cognizant of saying,
Convenient.
okay, what can we do, now that we know this is happening, what can we do the next 3 years to say, okay, can we go to automation? Do we have to do yard waste downtown, like things like that then cut off some of that anticipated additional increase next contract year.
And we do have municipal customers out there who have gone every other week with yard waste. They've gone every other week with recycle, and they kind of flip the two. And there are ones that have eliminated recycling altogether.
We need twice, 2 days of trash.
So if I understand, we are okay granting their request, basically. And are we okay getting the totes for downtown?
Absolutely.
I am.
Yeah.
Tell Michelle to find out.
Well, that would be another $1 increase, unless you're gonna use ARPA money. I'll talk to that with her, but either way, we're
Yeah.
gonna need a motion from you guys later.
Go up and visit her before.
Okay. Very good.
Do you guys have any questions for us at all before?
Thank you.
No,
Thank you. Really, we do appreciate you
Y'all have been
listening.
great
You know, so Melanie, try.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the next thing on our agenda has been moved. So up next, we'll have a special session at 5:30. So,
Public hearing.
yeah, public hearing, 5:30.
Wait, what? We have to wait? Oh, yeah.
We're moving
So-
transient to,
Next week.
later in the month.
Oh, okay.
All right, so
You're not
we're,
gonna, you weren't prepared to do it tonight, you said, right? Right, because of
Yeah, we
some
have
legal
to-
things.
We have to wait till 5:30.
all right, so we are adjourned until 5:30, and we'll see you for the
Yeah.
public hearing.
Darn it, I mean.